Hi, welcome to this episode, Prophecy for the Last Hour. My name is Liz McGee, and I'm going to switch things up a little bit today. I've been doing some teachings on the Divine Feminine and Paul, kind of things that are in the realm of the seed of the woman. I'm going to turn over tonight to the seed of the serpent. Oh my gosh, there's so much going on. It's hard to keep up with it all, but I have some insights and comments I want to make on this concept, seed of the serpent. And what I want to talk about today is, some of my research is showing me more into the concept of the Hallow Earth. Okay, this is another big unpacking going on out there. Now, the flat Earth, I want to say this disclaimer. I don't do the science of the flat Earth. You obviously see that from my YouTube. Whether it is flat or spherically dimensional, I just want to say this because people know that I study deep into the Jewish mystical traditions, into Kabbalistic understandings. I will tell you right there that they don't agree. I think that that's a mystery. That is a holy mystery that has not been 100% flushed out. There are great minds on both sides that have been trying to piece pieces of the puzzle together. But irregardless, I will tell you, irregardless, the Hallow Earth is something that is very biblical, and I want to flesh out a little bit more today. Because Earth is a dimension. We happen to be living on the Earth, in that plane, in that sphere, in that dimension. But there are many other dimensions with many other kinds of beings, and this is what I want to flesh out. I came across, after deep searching on this word called Panta, that actually I got a lot of help from another fellow researcher who had done a lot of study on it. It is the word for all things. A lot of times in Colossians it talks about Yeshua is above all things. And actually, that's very intellectual, but that's not at all what the translation really is. The translation should more accurately be, and especially in the context where it's used in Colossians, as all beings. Beings, living creatures. Okay, now I know our Bible is highly mistranslated. The words are all over the place a lot of times, but if you get back to the Hebrew and can compare it down to a couple of words and a couple of concepts, we are talking about, in different dimensions, living beings that have nephesh. You read Genesis, he created. When you get the whole story, when you get down to the last chapters, I have teachings, as I said before. It's a whole genealogical record of all the hosts of heaven, all the armies that Yahweh created, that populate this whole multidimensional thing that we are a part of. Because that's our Bible is multidimensional, it's supernatural, it's entities kind of go in and out of different dimensions. And at this point in Western Christianity, we are so secular, and actually we're about as Hellenized as they were back again at the time of Yeshua, where we have basically thrown the baby out with the bathwater. We consider it all myth and superstition, and oh my gosh, it's so, and nothing could be further for the truth. What I want to name this teaching is, because it's believe for the best, but prepare for the worst. Because I think it's all coming, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be again. It's just getting ready to pop. The final conflagration of the sons of light versus the sons of darkness is coming upon us. And so what I want to unpack today is a little bit more of one of these realms. You could call it the Hallow Earth, but more biblically, it is more called, I'll go into the Greek, a lot in Hebrew, Chthonic. These are chthonic realms. Chthonic is a Greek word understanding that comes, it means under or beneath the earth. It's the subterranean part. There's a huge subterranean world down there. And they know this. You know, if you're following all this kind of YouTube stuff, a lot of it's a little sensational, but you know, all the tunnels and the cities and the cultures and just the light, the stories of people, you know, the classified leaks or whatever you want to say, of stories, whether it's in Antarctica or really all over the world, this huge subterranean honeycomb world, which is actually very biblical. So let's just go, let me lay out a biblical foundation here first, because the words the Bible uses, we got, and then we can, and let's then use what they're used more secularly, and we can see a direct parallel here. We have to be talking about the same thing. So in Revelation, let's just start in Revelation 5. There's a chapter called The Scroll in the Lamb, but the storyline starts out that then I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll with writing on both sides and sealed with 7 seals. And I looked, a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, "Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll?" You have to hear the language. But no one, and that word is no one, and it means without exceptions. It leaves no exceptions. No one. All right. In heaven, and I've done some teachings on this. I have some past YouTubes that flush this out, but I have to go over this again. No one in heaven, on earth, or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside. Now, these are important. And then I want to go down to Revelation 13, chapter 5, 13. It says again, reiterates this, then I heard every creature, which is, again, creature's a bad word. It's living being. Okay, and I'm going to flush this out a little bit. We're living being in heaven, on earth, under the earth, and all that is, and on the sea, and all that is in them. And I looked at this in the Greek, and it really is referring to, there's two, when you talk about the sea, there's on the sea and there's in the sea. Because if you go back to Genesis in the first chapter when he's creating, and he creates the Leviathan and the large, quote unquote, sea creatures in the sea, and he creates aquatic things that are on the sea. There's kind of two aspects. And this is, okay, so these are words that our prophets have used, but they are referring to dimensions where there are living beings. Okay, so let me just go over it again. We have our categories. We have in heaven, on the earth, under the earth, on the sea, and in the sea. Okay, and let me just finish up this verse. It says that all these living beings were singing. So, I mean, there's always this, and let me just say this one more time, because the allegorical nature of the scriptures is done purposely on such a fantastical level that you're either going to just dismiss it as fantastical, or you're going to work it, like I said, and try to get to the bottom of what the esoteric understanding is. Okay, and so they're singing, and to him who sits in the Lamb, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb, to be praise, honor, and glory, and power forever and ever. And then it caps it off. We have 4 living creatures, all said, Amen, Amen, and all the elders fell down and worshipped. So this is all going on in the throne room, and it's very populated. And you have these living beings that are there. I don't know if they're invited or whatever. They're part of the divine council, whatever, but they are there. So in these dimensions, let's just talk about these places. So in, and it's the Greek, it's en, meaning in, it's in heaven. We don't have a lot of problems with that supernatural place, because we know angels are in heaven, you know, the sun, moon, and the stars are in heaven. We don't have too much problems with that. But then when you get into epi, or upon the earth, on the earth. Okay, so we have in heaven and on the earth. The word epi is a very specific preposition, and it means literally on the surface. Okay, so that's a very important distinction. So you have things on the earth. This is, you know, our plane. We are on the earth. That's where we are. Okay, then you have, which, and the word earth here is the word in Greek, it's the word Gia, which refers to, or in the Hebrew, it's the word Eretz. We're in the land, the dry land here, okay? That's where we are, this dimension. And the word is used here, it is also, it does, in the word, in the polysemous, right? Understand the word, it is this inverse, that it is a dimension. It is an arena in space and time. Okay, when talking about the earth, it's incorporating that whole, it is, in the word, is its whole dimension. Okay, so then you have, the next it goes into under the earth. That is a whole different word. Hupokatos. It literally means under. So if you have something that's on, in would mean up. We're going in heaven, on the earth, under the earth. This is exactly what these words are saying. And the under the earth means below, under, beneath the earth. And then these are all the under the throne. Because when we get to 13, and then it talked about Revelation, that was 5:3. In Revelation 3, 5:13, it said, you got a little more of it. It's in heaven, on earth, under the earth, upon, epi, you get the same word, upon the sea, and panta. This thing, everything, that's a very bad translation, it's this word panta, which in its context, when we're talking about living beings or living creatures, it has to be translated in its context as living beings. Panta, all beings. So the all beings in the sea. So this is how the prophets have kind of, and I'm sure they knew this. Our ancients interfaced with these different dimensions. We're the ones that have to get up to speed, and that's why I say we really should get up to speed fast, because mythology, there's a lot more fact in it than fiction, and it's going to come and hit us front and center, and if you're not ready, you know, you're just blown out of the water. That's a point. A virgin that doesn't have oil, if you don't have deep understanding of this, you're just going to be toast. That's all I could say. Right? So another place this is talked about is in Philippians 2:10. Paul is talking again in the context. Paul is talking about, he uses the exact same phraseology of in heaven, on earth, under the earth. And what he's saying is that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. So what's the point? We love to say that, oh, every knee will bow and every tongue. But in the context, it's talking about all the living beings in all the different dimensions. That's kind of a part of the story, a big part that we just sort of leave out and we don't meditate on. We don't understand. We don't compute that, put that into our worldview. So this concept that tongues, that these are living beings. They have the ability to speech and to confess. They have volition. That's all kind of wrapped up into this concept. You shall, that every tongue will bow and every tongue will confess and every knee will bow. Pure volition in that concept. So let me go back here to, with that understanding, because this gets into the 4 dimensions. This is why it always talks about the 4, the realms of the earth, air, another way, ancients, earth, fire, we get this right, air, and water. Okay, the same thing. We're talking the same 4 types of dimensions that are interface, that we interface with, whether we realize it or not. In obviously, water is in the sea. In heaven, air is in heaven, right? Earth would be on the earth, and the last one, fire, which is under the earth. This gets into a part of the association that, you know, has sort of kind of got very distorted of hell being a place of fire. But it's not fire. This is the point. These are beings that have a light source. They're beings, and they have sort of this plasma light source. They have a, and I'll get into this, a flesh, because Paul talks about it, that comes from, that they are made of the, I don't know how to say this, they can live in the dimension, quote unquote, unquote of fire. Okay, but it's not like the burning your house down with that kind of fire. It's more of an electrical. These are beings that have the Nakash, okay, was one of these beings in the garden from this dimension. And it says his name, when you work it, means burnish, means glowing, means he was had this fire essence to him. Like we got blood in our veins, they have quote unquote fire, a plasma. Don't ask me to go any more than that. That's what the words are suggesting, and that's where I am today. Okay, so let me go to Exodus 20, because there's something we need to understand. Because Genesis, Exodus, in Exodus 20, and Moses is really admonishing the people. They're kind of getting this whole new nation. They've come together, covenant. You know the story. They're his people, and they have chosen him, Yahweh, Yahweh, Vavhe, as their God, right? So this is where we kind of, again, we dumb it down, but now in context, 24, and this gets into the commandments. You shall not make for yourself an idol, okay, in the form of anything. Again, listen to our dimensions. You shall not make an idol of any living being, okay, let's just stick with any living being in any of these dimensions, in the form of anything in heaven, on the earth. Wait a minute, let me read this again. You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything, any living being in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord, your Yahweh Elohim, and a jealous Elohim, punishing the children, okay, for up to 1,000 generations. But the point is, we understand, these are living beings. Yahweh has a very, okay, if you think as Adam was originally before put in charge of all the living beings, he was the being that had, in our brain, the neocortex, he had the mind of in image and likeness. I just sort of did a teaching on this. He had the capacity to think with the rational mind, the mind of Yahweh, which is what we now as a Christian have. We have the mind of Christ. We have a higher level capacity. And this is where I'm not 100% sure. If this is not so much talking, we always want to put it hierarchical. It's hard not to do this, because in the literal sense, heaven is up. We go outside, you look up and you see a moving star, and that's, as in heaven. So there is an up to this thing. But at the same time, when we're talking about these different entities, a lot of the hierarchy to me, while there is a literal, because it is under the earth, there is also implicit in this, the higher up you go, the more, okay, what is the word? The more skills you have, the more, the greater your capacity to be a quote unquote an Elohim. I don't know if that makes sense. So in other words, things that are under the earth, because I just have this teaching, you should look it up, I think, about the reptilian brain. Our brain, we have 3 parts to our brain. The neocortex, the highest form of rational thinking, the limbic brain, which is where we have like our soul care, where we have likes and dislikes. We can choose our emotions, our memories. And then we have a reptilian brain, which is, I think, the evil inclination, which is the brain of the beast. It's a beast brain, okay? But the thing is, it cannot function. But it cannot function at the same level as the neocortex brain, which is light years ahead of it. But the beast brain, it's not like they're stupid. These beasts, they're cunning. This is why the serpent, who was a beast, was very cunning. He was smart. He was very able to assess his surroundings and come up with a plan and implement. He was very crafty. That's what these words are using. So the thing about a beast brain, so to speak, and things that from under the earth, so to speak, if this is their category, they're not stupid. They just do not have the ability. It's much more instinctual. They do not have the ability to have objective or higher order thinking. That's another whole teaching. Oh my gosh, I do the rabbit trail and I am sorry. Oh my gosh. Anyways, but this is where we have to understand when they were making idols, they're not making little wooden statues. See, we dumb it down, dumb it down, dumb it down. And we have to stop doing that because it's rampant today. Nobody's making little wooden idols. Our idols today, you know, we got Superman and we have all of these, what do you call it? These superheroes with superpowers, right? Those are the same. There's nothing new under the sun. We're talking about the same kind of living entities that can come in and out of dimensions that have quote unquote superpowers. So anyways, some of the things, let me go into now in, well, another place I just want to say, Jude 1:8, in 2 Peter 2:10, it talks about these, this is a category we don't have too much of a problem with usually, it's the celestial beings. Okay, we know that there are angels, there are beings in the heavens, they're ethereal, they're shape, and all these are shapeshifters. They seem to be able to go in and out of dimensions. Yeshua, I mean, seriously, shape-shifting, this is what we're talking about, the ability to be in other dimensions and be, all right, before I go there, let me go to 1 Corinthians 15, all right? It's another verse I've sort of unpacked in some of my past YouTubes on this subject. But 1 Corinthians 15, 38, okay? Paul is talking about the resurrected body, but he's, this is a really deep passage, and he starts out, but someone may ask, how are the dead raised? Because we know in the resurrection of the dead, in the very end, all living beings will be raised, and this includes the being of all the different dimensions. So, and then the question is, with what kind of body will they come? How foolish. What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. When you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just a seed. And that gets into another whole kind of esoteric understanding. But he goes into here, but God gives it a body as he has determined. Okay, because everything was made, going back to after its kind, according to its genos. And if we would just get out of kindergarten and think we're always really talking on the first level of the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea. No, we're talking about the beings that live in these different dimensions of earth, the subterranean, under the earth, in heaven, and in the sea, okay? He gives to each body as he has determined, and to each kind of seed he gives its own body. So that's the point. Everything starts with a seed. That's the whole point. The generative process. All flesh is not the same. So he's even telling you, if we're talking about beings from different dimensions, he uses the word flesh. Now there's two words here. All flesh is not the same. Men, Adamic, have one kind of flesh, and animals have another, birds another, and fish another. Now we want to always take that at the first grade, the literal level, and we're talking about fish and birds. And yes, it's true, they have a different kind of, their seed makes them into a different kind of animal. But we are talking in the esoteric understanding here of different beings in the different dimensions. So obviously, birds are in the heavens, and we know this. This is the easiest one to unpack in terms of keys, that birds represent angels. That's an easy one. Here, but fish, you know, have a flesh that lives in the dimension of the sea. But fish here is a code word for a dimensional being in that dimension. And think of Dagon, the fish god. All right. All these, well, I'll get into some word in mythology where these different kind of deities, quote unquote, originate from. So we have one kind of flesh, animals have another, birds have another, and fish have another. Then there are also the heavenly bodies, and there are earthly bodies. So, but the splendor of the heavenly bodies is one kind. So then again, he's saying again, there is celestial flesh and there is earthly flesh. But the words here is body. So he flip-flops between the word body, which is the word soma, and the word flesh, but is the word like more materiality. So in other words, we're a body, but it has, what he's saying is the flesh of it, the materiality, the composition, the seed that generates it will produce a different kind of, and this is where like it gets into where the container, okay, that houses its living part of it, its animation, its soul life, its animating, life-giving force, so to speak. But the word here, one, so then there are many heavenly bodies. Let's see, men have one kind, because this word one is a very interesting and tricky little word, because one, it means another of the same kind. So it's very important. Every genus that he made, species of living, and these are sons of God. These are angelic hosts. This is all part of the armies of Yahweh. They have one kind of flesh. So Adamic, we have one kind of flesh. Angels have another kind of flesh. Things that live in the sea, these deities that are sea deities, sea gods, have another kind of flesh, and birds another. But it's all of the same kind. So all the Adamics have the same kind. Versus, there's another key word for one that is used differently when you get into, and I think it's Jude, and he's talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, and he's talking about how they reproduced flesh, I can't remember the exact word, of another kind, of one. Oh, I should even just go there really quick because it's an important distinction. This helps to flesh that Egypt, the angels who did not. All right, in a similar way, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns gave themselves up to sexual immorality and perversion. Okay, the story here is, we think it's just sexual immorality, but this is, again, that's the first grade level. The sexual, the fornication they were doing was fornicating with another kind, with one of another species that is implicit in the words. This is the whole point of making a hybrid. That's why the story in the garden, it's a story of a hybrid coming in. Everything, remember, go back to, was supposed to reproduce within its kind, its genus. It would have been fine. And, we could have been humming along fine. No, none of these problems we've had, but this is not the storyline. But we're coming up on the wrap up. This is the good news, is this was not going to go on forever. This free will volition of all these different living beings to violate Yahweh Elohim's Torah, because Torah is in the whole cosmos, is going to come to an end. So so let me see if I flush that out. Okay, so these are dimensions that have living beings, and we know. Now let me go into more the mythological words that use this, but let me pack a little bit more under, because I'm going to focus a little more on under the earth, this subterranean world, this chthonic, which is the word. Now we know this is sort of where some of the key words we get in our body, under the earth. We know that there are, okay, so like 4 words that are always kicked around: Gehenna, Tartarus, Hades, and Sheol. For all these are realms, levels, so to speak, where living beings are under the earth. Okay, so the Sheol is the Old Testament word, and it really is just sort of a generic across the board word that it refers to the realm of the dead and departed souls. So this is, they had no problem understanding we have a soul, it's immortal. When you die, it goes somewhere. And it went into Sheol. And then when you flesh out that word more, there's words that refer to the good souls went to a place called Abraham's bosom. There's another word for it. Would go, this is what Enoch saw, different holding tanks. So if you were a good soul, you went somewhere where you were waiting for Yeshua to get you up out of the pit. That's why Yeshua, when he died and before he was resurrected, and he went down to Tartarus. That's the story. But in the Old Testament, it's also called the place of the pit. David is saying, you know, don't let my soul, when my soul goes down to the pit, you better be with me. And this is the thing, because they all had an understanding of these. I mean, there's so much literature in the cultures of the world about these realms and dimensions and the places of departed souls. In the whole story of Samuel, or no, what's his name, Saul, you know, conjuring up Samuel from the pit. Okay, now, and just let me make the clarification that the good news is that after Yeshua died, buried, and resurrected, he went down to Sheol and he took all the saints who were waiting, the good souls, up to paradise. That was their promise. They and he fulfilled that part. They are in paradise. They're waiting for us. We're the next batch, so to speak, to get resurrected, changed, to get back up a new soma, a new body, this way that will be with him in paradise forever. Okay, but let me just give you this, because, like I said, this is all over the literature, especially the secular literature of the all of the wisdom literature too of the world. Okay, so to the Hebrews, and I want to contrast between the Hebrew concept and the Babylonian concept of this place, Sheol. Okay, to the Hebrews, and they learned to stress obedience to the commands of the Torah, and this obedience would bring them to a future where they could be instrumental in restoring this earth to its forgotten Edenic condition. That was one of the promises. They would be able to rule and reign with the Mashiach in the millennial kingdom. Okay, the future promises of their destiny included the joy of resurrection, and that they could participate in this restoration. So this is what was promised to the just. The flip side is the Babylonian, or the damned. Okay, the damned. You have the blessed and you have the damned. They're, on the other hand, they had nothing to look forward to, but what they looked for was one of despair and dread. And this is partly why, you know, as we unpack this, the three Luciferians, they live so high on the hog, and they go to all extremes to get every ounce of luxury and out of this world, because this is it. Once they leave this realm where they can live quote unquote high on the hog, it's downhill. It's totally downhill after that. Anyways, so the Babylonians, in their life after death, they become a disembodied spirit, which would descend into the abyss of the dark and forbidding netherworld. And that existence in a future life was a dismal reflection of the former glory of their life here on earth. So that's why, you know, we don't store our treasures up here. You know, we're going to get our glorious life in the next life. They get it here, whatever. The Babylonian primary emphasis on sensual beauty and you know, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life, all these things is in the present life supersedes any hope of a reward in a future life or glory. So they know they become disembodied spirits. They go down into the netherworld. There are levels to that also. And I'm not going to get into it tonight, but I also have been doing a lot of studying, and there's some, you know, you can't leave any stone unturned. You have metapsychosis, oh my gosh, metapsychosis, okay, which is the fancy word for reincarnation. Is there a recycle of the soul? Actually, amongst many sects of the Jews, they did believe in that. Amongst many of the ancient cultures, there is a truth. They believed in a reincarnation, a system of recycling of the soul, so you could work your way up. Now, I'm not going to go into that, but I'm certainly not going to deny that that is a real reality to many ancient belief systems, okay, within even the Hebraic, okay? So this is fleshing that, but when you get into the Greek, the comparable word for Sheol is Hades, the place of the departed souls. And then you have different levels of it. You have Tartarus, which is the deepest level, where chains of darkness, and this is what's sort of interesting too. the watcher angels that fell, the 200 watcher angels and the ringleaders of them, have been locked up, says, in reserved in chains of darkness for the day of the great judgment. Okay, but in the Zohar, it flushes it out even more, and this is interesting today because, see, what's coming on a lot of research is where they're realizing that as it gets closer and closer to the surface, there has been so much contact with these realms again. I mean, it went really, really underground for centuries and centuries. It's always been there, but it was way underground. But it's coming in our face, front and center. I mean, TVs, movies, books, video games, everything is all about the chthonic realms in our face. But anyways, it talks about how Azazel, Uzzah and Azazel, two of the lead angels in the Genesis 6 incursion, were chained, and they were set by the side of a mountain. They were put by where a little light penetrated. Men who know where they are located seek them out, and they teach them enchantments and sorceries and divinations. These mountains of darkness are called the mountains of the east. And this is where Balaam said, from Aram has Balak brought me, and from the mountains of the east, because they both learned their sorceries there. So this is something that was really known, and a lot of people think, and I would probably, that these are mountains in Antarctica. This whole concept now we unpack Antarctica and what is down there, and is there a portal, and has it been accessed, and are the fallen side getting, again, amazing enchantment, sorceries, divinations, technologies, and information to really beef themselves up to, as it says for Armageddon, the armies of it, take their stand against Yeshua. So this is a real place. It's in the literature. This is where Balaam went, and he learned his sorceries from, and many, many magi, magicians, sorcerers, wizards, whatever. This has been known. This has been the deep, dark, occult knowledge and understanding, whatever. So let's go. Last thing I want to unpack is this. And Tartarus is synonymous also with the abyss. So when the abyss gets open, when these angels, these living beings from this chthonic realm are able to come back up to the surface, this is all part of the last days eschatology. It's in there. It's going to be really interesting. That's why I say, believe for the best, prepare for the worst. So, and then last word in our text is Gehenna. Gehenna would take a whole kind of teaching on its own, but there's that concept of hell and fire. And see, ultimately, the lake of fire, there is a realm, a final destination, a place will be a fire, but it is not, I don't believe it. It's burning in, your assignment, your place will be with these angels of fire, with these chthonic deities that have been in disobedience also, and you will be regulated to Gehenna, to the deepest, darkest, dankest, sludgiest place in all of the cosmos for all eternity. I mean, have at it if that's where you want to go, whatever. So, again, Hades is in Sheol, Greek or Hebrew. This is the place of departed souls. And I would say not even departed, that's where departed souls go, but it has also always been a realm. These have been realms of living beings. And what I'm trying to figure out, in this, there's huge ability, it seems to me, to go in and out of these dimensions. So that's another teaching. But then you had the sky region. Okay, so this is where, okay, let me see if I got through all that. So, because let me just say this, the point with Gehenna is a place, relates to the valley of Hinnom, which is a specific place and specific events went on in the Old Testament. But Yeshua uses the word 11 times, and it talks about fear him who can destroy both body and soul in Gehenna. So there is, and it's referred to in Revelation as the lake of fire. It's a place of judgment of the unredeemed where people experience judgment in their individual resurrected bodies. So that's a whole kind of teaching, fleshing out of itself. So now, chthonic, we have this place under the earth, the subterranean. And this is part of what is all being uncovered today. The secret ops, the governments of the world having interactions. This is the Nazis. This is the whole point of Unpacking, that they had incredible interaction with a lot of these deities, and I use the word gods in a small g because there is this concept that these are other dimensional beings. I think gods with a small g is a good, the Bible uses it as an across the board word for souls, living beings that live in other dimensions, and they're a small g. Now we know our Yahweh, Elohim, the Lord God Almighty, King of Kings, God of gods, there's no comparison, but there is a hierarchy, and a third of these deities has gone to the dark side, so to speak. Who knows what the ratio is now per se, but I want to just talk about this for a second. This word chthonic, it comes from a Greek word, chthon, and it absolutely does refer to under the earth, as opposed to the word Gia, which refers to on the earth. Gia, okay? But Philo is one I like to read. Philo has a lot of good information. He will give you a lot of the way these words are used, and they're more esoteric. And esoteric means just, wait for the wise. It's not, you're not going to teach this to your kindergarten level kids. You really want, but whatever. He calls it a honeycomb, in the sense it is a subterranean world that is made up of land and water. So in the sea, there's a land and a water relationship. Okay, that's all I can say. Some of the Greek gods they're chthonic gods. This is the whole point. They come from this subterranean world. Hermes and Zeus and Hercules. And they're a lot of times referred to as the Olympian deities, and they are male and female. And the other thing about all these, there's male and female entities and deities. Now, this is where we're going to switch, okay? So from sort of how the Bible kind of uses words to define these different dimensions to more of the mythological, and I'm going to see the comparison here. Because again, you have 4 realms from which we get, in the mythology, deities are coming from. You have, number 1, you have the primordial deities, okay? These are the firstborns. These are the deities that come from the highest, I wish I could, the highest, the aeons and the archons, okay? The highest level of Lucifer. I mean, he was definitely up in this category of being a primordial deities before the foundations of the world, okay? Then you have, and these are deities that are born from chaos. See, most of this, and I believe, are talking about, like I said, the seed of the dark side. How do you say, the seed of the serpent, the seed, the rebellious, the wicked, the damned. All right. In the foreknowledge of Yahweh, He knows the end from the beginning. He knows every soul, where it originates, where it's going to end up. It's not news to Him. He's already prepared a place. He's already prepared a place for us. He's already prepared a place called Gehenna for the damned. It's a done deal. That's why, well, okay, I'm not going to preach. So we have the primordial deities that are born from chaos, but then the flip side is you have primordial deities. These would be our archangels, that are born from the right side, because this gets into holding the left side, the right side. Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's origination is a big deal. Okay, but these we're talking about originating from chaos. The second group is, you get what are called the Titans. These are the second generation of divine beings. See, I would say Adam because you do have the Adamic, you have Adam, who was put ahead of, at the top of the food chain of all these quote unquote living beings, deities. Then you have the Titans, which are the second generation of divine beings, down here, sort of boots on the ground. I was trying to keep it really simple and clean. Okay. Then you have a place called, I'm going to go back into the Titans and the Olympians, because that's a big part of the mythological chunk that we get. Then you have what are called the aquatic or the sea god or deities. This is all over the mythology. So Poseidon, he is the head deity over the sea gods, the sea living beings. So remember, beings in the sea. Okay. Then you have the chthonic deities, and these are the ones which under the subterranean, under the earth. And I believe these are more of, this is where the Nakash is really reading the mythology. He kind of had to worm his way up to paradise. This is the point. It's so interesting how these all are in relationship to each other. I'm just trying to 1 hour sort of unpack this. But Hades and Persephone Persephone is one of these. These are the rulers of this underworld chthonic realm. But Hades, a lot of these things, the name of the god is also the name of the location. So Hades is a god over the geographic region of the name called Hades. Okay, departed soul. So these deities are often associated with snakes. Oh, isn't that interesting? And often portrayed in the mythological symbolic world entwined with serpents. So isn't that interesting? You think that's an accident? No, these people understood. The Nakash was one of these chthonic deities. Now, when you get into the story of the Titans and the Olympians, and again, history is sort of, it's pretty, well, one thing is we don't read our history. We don't read, all right, how do I even start in this direction here? Okay, there's a lot of ancient historians who believe that the mythology is really accurately, and they'll plug in the names of the different characters, the biblical characters, with their quote-unquote secular names. So here is one. This tradition is extracted from Seneculus, an ancient historian. Josephus picks it up in Antiquities of the Jews. Eusebius carries it along in the Evangeline that he writes. But after the flood, these are the characters: Titan, Prometheus, and Kronos. Okay? Titan, according to historians, is Shem. Prometheus is Japheth, and Kronos is Ham. So in the story of the Titans and the Olympians, and this really gets really deep, and also the next character here, and then by universal consent of history and tradition, Alorus or Orion is the Nimrod of the scriptures, and he was the founder of Babylon and the first king, the first chthonic king of the underworld, back up on the earth, ruling and reigning with a kingdom. Because the flood had come, and the flood had truly, it had just kind of wiped it all out. All of these, this is why they call this the time of chaos, especially in Jewish, the way the sages break it down. The first 2,000 years is called the time of chaos, because there was so much interfacing going on with these four different realms and dimensions in the mythology. And this explains the Egyptians and the hieroglyphs. See, these people, where you will see their deities, one will have a bird head, and one will have a beetle head, one will have like a bull head. See, they're telling you, that's another symbolic pictorial way of telling you where these deities are coming from. Okay, so with this story, we know that Ham was of Chthonic seed line. His mother, this is the whole story, was a Canaanite that Noah, who was told to marry, and had him and took on the ark with her. But she was also had like become, because the religion had become a believer, had become a righteous woman. She had repented of her bloodline. She had gained entrance into the tents of Ham and Shem and was known as a very righteous, at least Naamah, righteous Canaanite. And her son Noah was brought on the ark. So this gets into the whole story. See, a lot of this is telling you, they do this in such esoteric couch language. The story of Ham and Noah when he got quote unquote drunk, and the fruit of the vine. So this is very, again, highly apocryphal language for giving you a storyline of, again, hybridization going on. Ham slept with his mother. This is what it's telling, and produced a seed that was 2/3 now Canaanite and 1/3 Ham, because these boys represent different soul. Oh, this gets really deep. I mean, I hope I haven't lost you yet. Coming from different, their souls originations. Okay, we know that Titan, that Shem had a righteous soul. He was actually the high priest. He inherited all the firstborn blessings. Japheth, and it says that Japheth will hang out in the tents of Shem. A lot of times they are, the Shem, you get a lot of the Greeks, you get a lot of these pagan nations, but that have very close ties to the Hebraic traditions. But then you have this line of the Canaanites that still went through, is still with us today. This is, when he gets into the whole, and I'm writing a book, and I'm going to put this all together. I swear I've been at this for years. I don't think I'm 100% off base. Maybe I'm 90% there, figured it out. I'm not saying but I'm pretty sure this is what we're talking about. Let me just get back to Nimrod, who was the first Chthonic king, and he brought back all the bad watcher behavior of wars and violence and brother killing brother and domination and, stealing land and just every evil work. Defying God, not living Torah, subjugating men, subjugating women, having slaves, killing babies, whatever. Okay? So this is where, all of the bad fruit again. And a lot of what happened in the first 500 years, again, after the flood, this is the war of the Titans versus the Olympians. This, again, it gets back to a war, a bloodline, seed line war between the earth. Again, Noah, Yahweh made it clear he put the mantle of the kingship on Noah. Noah was to rule the earth and to rule it according to Torah laws, Noahide laws, in justice and righteousness. We know a lot of these stories that come to that Ham, his sons Mitzrayim, who founded Egypt, and all of their, again, pagan, chthonic deities, the Book of the Dead. I mean, look at that stuff, all their subterranean stuff that's going on, that even we know now pre-flood, a lot of it. And you had Babylon founded by Nimrod. Again, these chthonic deities at war, the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman at war with each other. So this I think is really real, and we have to begin to grapple with this, wrap our minds around it. And this is the thing, this is what Satan is, so he's reintroducing this to a whole generation, to the whole, all generations. You're not exempt from it. Kids are raised on this little, what's her name, Little Mermaid. Oh, this is funny. I have a quick story. So I was sharing some of this information, this sort of women's group I'm in, a prayer group, wonderful women of God, of Yahweh. And one of the girls tells me some stories about her grandfather, great-great-grandfather, stories in the family that have been passed down. He was a seafaring captain, and he had some ships and, all over the world. And he said there were stories where they would be in places and they would see the nymphs. Okay, it's another word for these mermaids. These chthonic deity, or the sea deities that would come up and would show themselves and try to entice and engage the sailors and get them, you know, to follow them or to just engage with them, and then that would be the beginning of their downfall. But this whole concept of the Little Mermaid, these things, Hollywood and Disney is just reintroducing all these different dragons. These are just nothing but the different realms, and unfortunately these are all the fallen realms, or the fallen participants, fallen living beings in these realms, okay, being reintroduced. You know, subtle, a sorcery that is just taking over the mind. In the video games today, the kids playing, in the books, and in Harry Potter, all this kind of stuff. We are full, this is the point, as I said, of the superstitions of the East, which is, again, referring back to, as I said, the place, the mountains of the East, where the fallen angels, watcher angels, are locked up, but they still have so much influence. It's unbelievable. They're filling this whole generation, again, with the sorceries, the witchcrafts, the divinations. But you know what? Bring it on, because this time, bring it on. The sons of light are here. We're ready. There is a people on the planet, 144,000. We're going to be changed. 11 plague. This time the playing field is going to be more than level. Let me put it that way. It's going to be very interesting to see how this thing wraps up. So that's why I say prepare for the best. You better be in the house. You better be fully immersed in your inheritance, in who you are as a living being, with Yeshua as sitting at the right hand of the Father above all these other living beings. You better know your position. You better know your place of authority. And that's all I can say. And there's still time to repent. This is why the gospel took off like a rocket in the earth. People were not expecting that their heritage, their peoples, from their places could be brought into this one new man, this all Israel that was being of this new heaven and new earth, where he was going to make all things new. So the door is still open. There is no other name under heaven for any Gentile or anyone coming in but the name of Yeshua. So I say, repent now, because tomorrow, who knows? So anyways, on that note, I'm going to stop recording, and I will put this up on my YouTube channel, and I hope you are blessed. Shalom.